Financial Modeling, Topic 7, Advanced Excel Tools. Benninga textbook on financial modeling provides a number of resources for this area, in particular web queries, VBA types and loops, user-defined functions, and arrays. In this topic, we're going to look at macros, putting descriptions in functions, doing data tables and controls, conditional formatting, and others. First of all, a user-defined function or a user function is used to make calculations, return a value to a cell. A macro, which also is written in VBA, is used to automate tasks. For example, copy a value, a formula from one cell and put it in another. Macros are stored in modules just like functions, and their basic VBA code looks a lot like a function. Now, in VBA, a macro specifically is a subroutine that has no parameters. So we'll write a macro, instead of the word function, we'll write sub, give it a name, and do an open and close. And then the closing line is end sub, and the middle section is where you put the statements. Macros are run from your developer tab. So you can go to developer, macro, and look for any macros to run. So let's take a look at these two macros, cells demo 1 and cells demo 2. And these are from Benninga. I'll go to my developer tab, developer, Visual Basic, and I'm going to insert a module, and I'll paste these two functions in, or macros in. Again, they're called subs, so they're a macro. They have no parameters. Now the first macro, cells demo 1, says to take whatever's in cells, or put in cells 1, 2, the number 5. Now when you see cells 1, 2 equals 5, that's directing it to go to first row, second column of Excel and put in the value 5. So if I run this macro, click on macro, cells demo 1, it puts the number 5 there. And then the other function puts in some text into cells 2, 2, 2, 3, and 2, 4. So macro, cells demo 2, it puts some text. Now the easiest way to run macros is to hit either Alt F8 or go to developer macro and run it. You can also attach it to your quick access toolbar up here, or create a shortcut key. And lastly, what I usually do it is attach it to an art object. So I'll show you that. We could insert, well, let's look at what's attached to this new macro here. It's called cells 3 demo. Now this macro says for I, for j, next I, where I and j go from 1 to 12. And it says cells ij equals I times j. So this is a nested loop, and this is the code we used in the last topics to populate or put values in an array or a multidimensional array. So I is your row counter, j is your column counter. Sets I and j equal to 1. Put in cells 1, 1, in other words, my first cell of my spreadsheet, whatever I 1 times 1 is. And then it sets j equal to 2. So now you have looking at first row, second column, and puts in 1 times 2. It's going to do that for the first 12 rows or columns, and then again and again and again for 12 rows. So let's take a look and see what this macro does. Copy, Visual Basic. I'm going to paste it down here in my module. And then I'm going to create an art object. I'm going to insert. And let me get a shape. I'll just grab any shape. So I grabbed a shape in Excel. And then I'm going to do a right click, assign macro, cells demo 3. Now anytime I click on this shape, it's going to run the macro, and you can see what the macro does. It sort of does a times table. Whatever's in cells 3 times 3, 3 gets 3 times 3. And here's 12, 12, 12th column, 12th row is 12 times 12. So it puts in whatever is in cells ij, I times j. And here's another example of how cells could be used with a macro. This macro says, put into cells 15.5 whatever's in 12.12. Well, what's in 12.12 right now is 144. If I look for 15.5, 15th row, 15th column, it's going to put this number here over here. So I'll grab that macro, copy, go back to my developer, Visual Basic, and I'll paste it down here, cells for demo. And then I'll run that macro, and it just took whatever's in 12.12 and it put it here into 15.5. So this is a way you can get your macro to interact with your spreadsheet using the cells command. You can also record macros. So for example, what if you have a repetitive task where every day you will say download data that may look like this, and you might need to transpose it or convert it to values or change the formats. Any repetitive keystroke can be created using a macro, and you just record the macro. So let's go back to our spreadsheet here. Say we're going to go to developer, and then I'm going to record macro. It's going to be called macro 1. It could create a shortcut key, but I'll just hit OK. And this macro is going to take whatever is in these cells here, copy them, paste them down there, and then home, it'll change the formats to inputs. I'll go back to my developer tab and I'll hit stop recording. Now what happened is if I go now to my macro or my Visual Basic, and looks like it created a new module, module 2. This is the VBA code that was just created, and you can see the code. It's called macro 1 is the name of the subroutine or macro, and looks like these are the commands to select a range. Copy that selection, and then paste, and then lastly change the formats. Style, selection, input. So sometimes I'll create macros where I have competitive or repetitive keystrokes. Also, if there's something I'm trying to do in Excel, say run a solver or something I like to create a macro to do, sometimes I'll just record my keystrokes, create a macro, then go ahead and use that code in either a function, or in another macro I'm creating. So we'll go ahead and run this macro. Again, it's called macro 1. So if I were to say get rid of this new section here, I can now run the macro, and you can see it did exactly as I've done before. A couple of things we want to cover is how to add descriptions in functions. So the user could see them. So we're going to take this function here called PVX. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my Visual Basic, Module 1, and I'll paste it up top. So PVX is a function we've created before to calculate the present value of a vector of cash flows. Now if I were to then close this, now anyone can now use PVX inside the spreadsheet, so I can click on Insert Function, User Defined, find PVX, and I could put in an array of cash flows and an interest rate. But notice here where it says No Help Available. Well, we can put descriptions here, just like in Excel's functions, right? If I were to input, say, a function, we'll just take the first one here. Or, well, let's do a say absolute function. It's going to give me help here. It's going to tell me returns the value of a number, and then tells me what the number is that you've input up here. So it tells me something about the parameter and something about the output. Now to put in those descriptions, I'm going to hit Alt F8, or go to my macro key or macro tab. We'll then type in the name of the function up here. It's called PV. Now watch when I type in X, some of these will highlight or become active. Now notice I can click on options, and then I can put a shortcut key in there, but that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm going to put a description in. So I can say this function returns the present value of a column of values. The interest rate is entered as a decimal. So I can put anything I want in there, but I'll just hit OK and then cancel out here. Now if I were to insert PVX as a function, that description then comes out. So if you're going to create a spreadsheet that other people are going to use and create functions that other people are going to use, it would be helpful to have these descriptions. So there are two ways to actually document a function. One is to do what we just did there. The other way to do it would be to go into Visual Basic and then type text here. So you have two places you can make comments, and my advice would be, if you're writing comments for yourself and you're going to be the only user, I'd put them here, because when you copy these functions and say take them to another worksheet, you keep these descriptions. If this function is going to stay in this workbook and you're going to allow other people to use it, I would then use the macro area and add an option description. All right, so next Excel trick we're going to look at is the use of data tables. So data tables allow you to do a two-variable sensitivity analysis. Very easy. So let's take this spreadsheet here. Just calculates the present value of a cash flow and compares it to a price of a stock. So let's take a look at it. So you can see this. I have a free cash flow of $10, an interest rate of 10%, and a perpetual growth rate of 2%, and I have a stock price of $100. What this function does, it takes the present value of $100, discounted at 10% with a perpetual growth rate of 2%, and then it compares that to the stock price. So if the present value is 100 and the stock price is 100, this returns a value of 0. But it doesn't matter what the function really does. I just want to show you that if you want a sensitivity analysis, that if the discount rates range from 10 to 12 or 10 to 20, and the perpetual growth rates range from 1 to 9, what is the sensitivity analysis on this value? So all you have to do is have a link to an initial calculation, and then set up a table where I just have different values of discount rates, and then I input different values of growth rates. And then what I'd like to do is get a present value, have this calculation work against all of these discount rates and growth rates. So what I'll do is I'll highlight this table, and then I'll go to my Data tab, Data, What If, and put a data table in Data tab, What If, Data Table. Now it asks for an input row. Now the input row is simply, you just look and see I have, looks like discount rates in my row. So I'm going to click on the original discount rate, 10%, that ties to this formula. And the column are growth rates, that ties to this original growth rate, and then hit OK. Now I have 54 different NPVs, and you see as the growth rate increases, the value of this investment increases, and as the discount rate decreases, so does the value. And you can see there's your sensitivity analysis. Looks like your break even is along this or this envelope here. And one other thing I like to do sometimes with data is to highlight data, and create a format for a range of data that changes color with values. That's called conditional formatting. So I selected my data already. I'll go Home, Conditional Formatting, and do a color scale. So Home, Conditional Formatting, Color Scale, and you can pick whatever one you like. So this one looks like it creates the highest value as green, and then has a change as the color goes from green to red, where negative are reds, and it really shows you kind of the envelope of where the NPVs turn positive or negative. So it gives you an idea of the likelihood that this project is going to be a positive, say, investment. Next thing I'll show is a little trick is Sparklines. So sometimes I want to get a quick graph that links to data, and I'll just use this data here just because it's here. I can actually insert a graph inside a single cell to give you, say, a daily stock chart or something like that. All right, how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to go click on an empty cell and hit Insert Line, Spark Line, or Spark Column. So Insert, look for Spark Line, output location, that's my current cell, and hit OK. And you can see this is graphing that data there. So you can see how the values change as the discount changes, or you can put them down here. I can insert a spark line that uses a column, and you can see how the value changes as the discount or the growth rate goes up. So it's a good way also kind of doing some sensitivity analysis, and you can imagine using daily stock charts or something where prices come in automatically. You can create graphs, and these graphs will change as the data changes. So if I make this as 0, well, I will not be able to do that. But if I were to change any of this data inside here, I can't change it an array right now. It'll change the chart. I'll note, actually, it reminds me, if you ever need to get rid of a data table, you have to highlight the entire table and hit delete. You can't just hit delete a part of an array, because you can see this is an array function. You know there's an array function when you see the brackets around the formula. A couple other tricks that are useful, especially in finance when you're manipulating large sums of data or trying to summarize data. And that is using vlookups and sums, and then we'll create some pivot tables. So if I take, say, this data here and copy, you'll see that I have sales by year, by quarter, and also have profits. So say you wanted to summarize what were the sales in a particular quarter or a particular year or profits. Here are a couple tricks. One is, notice here, I just to check my numbers, I have a sum of just the values of 2011 sales and 2011 profits. But let me show you how to do that with a sum if. So we know that the sum of the three 2011 profits is 537, but we can do a sum if. I can highlight this entire range, or I'm sorry, do an equals sum if, where I highlight an entire range. All right, that's my range. And then I can highlight, say, 2011, which is right here. All right, this cell here, 2011. And the last part asks you what column gets summed, and all I do is highlight sales. So what this allows me to do is it's only going to sum the data in this area that has the left side equal to 2011. That left column has a value of 2011, and it's going to give me the value in the third column. So now if I want 2012 sales, I can just change that to 2012. So sum if are great if you're looking for a sum of a series of cells in which the left column values will be match some criteria. And the other way you can do it is a vlookup. A vlookup is you say equals vlookup, and you tell it what you're looking for, say 2012, that's the first parameter, and then give it a range, which is this range here. So it's going to look through this range. Actually, I just have it on a small one so we can see it on one screen. So I have this as my range. So it's looking for 2012, say in this range here, and then it's going to return whatever's in the third column. So it's going to return whatever's in the third column that's matched 2012. So that's a vlookup. Now if the labels are at the top, you do an hlookup, and it'll look for, say, the third row. And here's the same thing for profits. Sum if vlookup. So these are powerful if you have a large data set and you need to summarize them quickly or grab values out of a large data set and you only need particular values. And this leads to pivot tables. Pivot tables are a good way of summarizing data, kind of maintaining sort of a database in Excel. So say this is my data. I could highlight the data, including the label, and I can ask for something called a pivot table. So I'm going to highlight my data. And I'm going to insert a pivot table. Insert pivot table. The data is already highlighted, so that picks that up. And then I'll do an existing location. I'll just put the pivot table right next to the data. So here's a blank pivot table. These are my fields to choose from over here. So what I need to do is first add to the table I want to have years as rows. So I'll grab years, drag and drop, and put it down here under rows. And I could say grab profits and put it here under rows if I wanted to, but I'll just stick with years. And then I can say I want sales and profits. So notice what this did. This took 2011 and summarized all of the sales. Right? And you can see that ties to 537 over here. I'll change the format of this. All right. Again, then if I click on the spreadsheet, I could also click on the table. Notice I could change it and say all I want is 2013 sales. So you're able to select different items here. And also one thing you can do is, what if you don't want the sum of sales? I could right click here and summarize by average. So these are the average of my sales, my average of my quarterly sales by year. So this is a good way of summarizing data without having to always access and go back to the data and try to manipulate it. You can add slicers to tables. I'll change this one back to sum. And now I get something called a slicer. So I'll click on my table. I know I'm in there because this pops up. And I'm going to go to the insert menu and insert slicer. And I'll pick, say, year and quarter. I'm going to move these over. So what I have now are kind of push button selection criteria. What if I just want 2011 Q1 sales? I get that. What if I want 3 years? I'll hold down the shift button, highlight all 3 of them, and get Q1 sales. Or if I want all years, all quarters, I'll highlight all these. So it allows you to set up report criteria right here. So that is data pivot tables and slicers. Next thing we'll do is let's grab this spreadsheet here. I'll copy that. Get out of there. And I'll add a sheet. So here's a spreadsheet that calculates value at risk. So I have portfolio mean, standard deviation, here are some weights. And I calculate value at risk down here. And say I want to have a user calculate different values at risk for, say, different periods of time and different confidence intervals. So they might pick 99% or 90% confidence interval, or they might have a 1, 2, 3, 5 or 1 year value at risk. I can go to my developer tab and add spin buttons or drop down menus so the user knows exactly how to select data. So let's do a drop down menu. I'm going to click on my 95%. Notice I've put in a set of values over here, 90, 95, and 99. So I did that first already. Alright, so I go and click on my data. Go to my data tab. I'm going to go to data validation. So data validation. And I'm going to allow a list. And the source will be anywhere in your spreadsheet. Have values the user can select from. So I put in that range here as the source. Now after doing that, what you'll now notice as the user clicks on the cell, they see a drop-down menu and they change that to 90% var, 95% var, or 99% var. So you're helping the user try to figure out, well, what are the allowed values for a particular input. And the other thing you can do is you can add another tool which allow you to change, say, number of days quickly. So I'm going to do a spin button. So I'm going to click on my cell here, 4. So I say I want 1 through 252 days. I'm going to go to my insert button, our developer tab, insert a spin button. I'm going to right click on that spin button and put in the values. So developer, insert, I'm going to grab a spin button. I'm going to put the spin button right next to my 4. I'm going to right click on my spin button, format controls, and let's go ahead and put a value of, say, 4 for the current value, minimum value of 1, and maximum value of, say, 252 days. The cell link is what value it's going to change. It's going to change this cell here. And hit OK. Alright, so now we have a spin button that's linked to this cell. So I can change the var from 1 day, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So again, you're helping the user select either a list of or a menu of, say, values, a list, or let them spin up and down. A couple other tools we're going to show you while we're talking about data validation and data protection. If I again go to my data validation, well, I can say click on any cell. Say it's annual mean. I can click on data validation. And what I could do here is make sure a user would only put in, say, a whole number or a decimal, so they wouldn't, by mistake, put in anything. The default is allowing any value or text string to go into Excel. So again, it's just another way of trying to help the user know exactly what to input. You can also protect cells, so you never want the user to change the var formula, which is right here. You can select the cell, do a right click, format cell, protection, and have it locked. Then I can go to my Review tab, Protection, and protect the worksheet. Once you do that, the user will not be allowed to change those cells. So you have to do both. You have to protect the cells and then turn it on over here. And then you can see it's been protected. All right, so this is ways to try to protect your worksheet, protect users from messing up formulas or changing formulas, and giving them a clue to what values to put in. A couple more things to look at is a lot of times we download data from the website or from financial sources. So here's an example where I download, these are Fama French factors from the Ken French Data Library. And when I download them, I found out that it brings them in as text. So notice that this is a text string, and this is a text string. It's not actually in the cell, right? They're not in. They're all in just row A or column A. A trick, if you ever get data that it looks like it's already in columns, either separated by commas or spaces, you can highlight the first column, data, text to column. If there were commas separating the data, I would click on this one, but it looks like it's already found out there seem to be fixed widths, and it gives you a chance to change where to set the column, but it looks like it's okay. I can look down here and finish. So now it's taken that data and it's put it into columns for me. So that's text to columns. So a lot of times in finance, we're always trying to repair data or get data that's missing, or omit data that's missing, or change some miscellaneous characters are out there. So here are a couple things to do that. And I'll just click on here and show you these. One, sometimes I'll download data from some financial websites and it'll put some random characters out here. Say here, put a $sign in here, and this is text, and a couple X's at the end. One way of fixing that is I can use, say, a left command. So I say equals left, highlight this cell, and put in the number 4. So what it's doing, it's only taking the 4 left variables, $100. So then it has taken out the X's for me. I can also do a replace function. So here, notice I still have a $sign in here. I could say replace, highlight on this cell, the first character, and only one character in length, and then I put in a blank. So it's going to take the first character, one character, this $sign, and replace it with actually a null set. So it's going to take it and just get rid of it. So those are very helpful things. Also, you might want to look at their concatenate functions for manipulating data also. Last couple things. In Excel, if you were to go to the recalculation method, so sometimes you'll notice you're doing things in the spreadsheet but nothing is updating. You can just go to your Formula tab, and click on Calculation Options and make sure it's set to automatic. Every once in a while it'll go to manual, in which case you have to hit F9. Or sometimes your spreadsheet is, you create a huge spreadsheet that's operating too slowly. So what you'll do is you'll change your calculation method to manual. That way it'll only refresh when you hit Calculate Now here or hit Alt F9. Also, I want to show you here some good keys for if you're trying to debug a spreadsheet or trying to figure out, say, well, how do I get var here? Well, I can click on formula, say this formula, and I could trace precedence or dependence. And what you'd see, it would give you links that this cell is coming from calculations from these. And last thing is when you set up name ranges, and say you make a mistake and set up a name range somewhere where you didn't want to, you can always go to Formula, Name Manager, delete out the named ranges, and then add them back, or change their names. So these are a series of Excel tricks I've learned over the years, and hopefully they can help you out in manipulating data and securing data. Last thing I'm going to talk about are web queries. Web queries allow you to grab data from the internet and put it in your spreadsheet and have the spreadsheet go out to the internet whenever you ask it to update the data. So let's do a simple, we'll call it a static web query, where it's always going to a static website and getting the same piece of data. So if I were to grab this website address here, copy it, and go look at it, what you'll notice is it is an order book, or it's a website that currently has the current stock price for IBM. So that's the website. I can go to Excel and have that website pop up here. So I'll go to Excel, Data, Get Web from the Data from the Web, Data, Get Data from Web. It asks me for a website. I'll put it up here. Hit Go. Now every website has a set of data items, and you can see that there's ads and these little arrows you can click on. But on this website, the only thing I really would like is the last traded price data. So I'll click that and hit Import, and we'll put it right there. So there's IBM's currently traded price. The nice thing is I can set up a spreadsheet, say I have 100 shares of IBM, and I want to calculate the value. I could take 100 shares times the current price, and there's my current value of my portfolio. Now this is not just pasting values into Excel. If I do right click on this, I can hit refresh, and you can see the price just dropped, and it also updates my spreadsheet. So you can see this be valuable. I could set up, say if I own 50 stocks, I could set up 50 ranges here, and then on another sheet I could have input all my shares, and I can simply update the spreadsheet whenever I want without having to go back to the web. Now you can refresh it again by doing a right click and hitting refresh data, or you can click on the web query, data range properties, and you can have it reset or refresh every 60 minutes, or maybe just every time you open the file, which would probably make more sense. Every time you open the file, go ahead and refresh it. So these are options for how often the data is refreshed. Right. Again, it's 157.03. We'll see if it changed. Refresh. 157.05. These are updating. All right, so that's called a static web query. Static meaning that I can only set it up for one particular data item, say IBM price. But what if you want to set up a spreadsheet, add some space here, where I put, say, IBM here, and then the price of IBM would show up here, but if I change this to, say, Google, the price would change. So that would be a parametric web query, where the IBM becomes a parameter to the web, and it will update and get new data. Now this will only work if the website has a particular format, and specifically if you look at this website, say here's finance.yahoo.com, and here are the key statistics for a company. And if I look at the website, I see that the symbol IBM pops up. If you can find a website, and if I just take this website and go and paste it, and if this is going to work, if I can take IBM and say replace it with, say, Goog, and I get Goog's key statistics, or I can replace that with MSFT, Microsoft. Alright, so this is a good website. It's a good website in the sense that I can always just replace one particular value in the address and it'll update the website. So I'll change that back to IBM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that website, I'm going to go to Excel, and then go to Data, Excel, Data, get data from the web. Put in my website. Select my data item, which in this case I want to make sure I only get, say, key stats, and hit import. And hit OK. And there's my IBM. Alright, now this doesn't change. This has market cap, PE, and so on. Now I want to go back to my query. So I want to create maybe a new worksheet, sheet 3. But let me go back here. I'm going to do right click on my query, edit query, and it's going to send me back to the website. And I'm going to do save. And let me save this, or save this as, I don't know, test 1. Doesn't matter, just give it a name. It's called a web query. I'm just going to put it to my desktop. And I'll save it. So this saved the information about the website and which item to select. Now if I go to my desktop, I'll find that file, test 1, and I'm going to edit it with Notepad. Here's the web query. I'm not sure what all this stuff means, but here's the selection of the data item. That must be the data we select and checked and turned green. And here's the website. So every time you use this web query, it uses this website. But you can change IBM. Let me put brackets around IBM. And I can change that to, say, enter symbol, where you ask the user to enter a symbol when you insert this web query, and they can put in a different symbol. So I'm going to file, save, and get out of there. So I'll go back to my new worksheet I collected. And then I'm going to go Data, Existing Connections. And browse for more. I'm going to find that file I just changed. It's on my desktop. There it is. Where do you want to put the data? We'll put it right there. Enter symbol. We'll put it right there. Well, actually, let's do this first. Let's put IBM up here. And then do Data, Existing Connections, Browse, my desktop. We'll put it there. Hit OK. Enter symbol. We'll click on the IBM. Then we're going to click. Use this value for future refreshes. Refresh automatically. It's having a little trouble here, but hopefully it worked for you. Now that what you should notice is if you put in a new website, say, or a new symbol, Goog works, and IBM, change it to IBM's. So this is a parametric web query. This is very valuable if you want to, say, have a link to, say, statements of cash flows or balance sheets or stock prices or anything you want, and you want them to update anytime you want. So that's a parametric web query.